Psalm 142, a plea for relief from persecutors. Psalm 142 is a deeply personal prayer of David written during a time of extreme distress. The heading indicates that it was composed when he was in the cave, a reference to the period when David was hiding from King Saul, who was seeking to kill him. During this time David lived as a fugitive, often isolated and surrounded by danger. The psalm therefore reflects both his emotional struggle and his reliance on God. It moves from lament and loneliness to renewed confidence in God's deliverance. The psalm begins with David crying out to the Lord with urgency. He emphasizes that he is speaking with my voice, highlighting the intensity and sincerity of his prayer. Rather than suppressing his distress, David pours out his complaint before God and openly declares his trouble. This shows that prayer can include honest expressions of pain and confusion. David does not hide his struggles, instead, he brings them directly to God, trusting that God listens and cares about the burdens of his people. In verse 3, David describes his inner state. His spirit is overwhelmed. He feels exhausted and emotionally crushed by the circumstances surrounding him. Yet even in this moment of weakness, he acknowledges that God knows his path. Though David cannot see a clear way forward, he believes that God understands the situation fully. Meanwhile, enemies have secretly laid traps for him. The imagery of snares suggests hidden plots and danger, reflecting the political and personal threats David faced while fleeing from Saul. The sense of isolation becomes even more intense in verse 4. David looks to his right hand, a place where an ally or defender would normally stand, but finds no one. No one recognizes his plight, and no refuge appears available. He even says that no one cares for his soul. This statement reveals the depth of his loneliness. David, once a celebrated hero in Israel, now feels abandoned and forgotten. The verse highlights how suffering can produce not only physical danger but also emotional isolation. The turning point of the psalm occurs in verse 5. Despite the absence of human help, David declares that the Lord himself is his refuge. Instead of relying on earthly protection, he places his security in God. He also calls God his portion in the land of the living. In biblical language, a portion refers to an inheritance or share of blessing. By using this expression, David affirms that his ultimate security and satisfaction come from God himself. Even if everything else is uncertain, God remains his source of hope and stability. In verse 6, David again pleads for God's help, asking the Lord to attend to his cry because he has been brought very low. He acknowledges that his persecutors are stronger than he is, admitting his own inability to overcome them. This humility is significant because it demonstrates dependence on God rather than self-reliance. David's request for deliverance is not based on his own strength but on the belief that God has the power to rescue him from overwhelming circumstances. The psalm concludes with a hopeful request, "Bring my soul out of prison, that I may praise your name." The prison likely represents David's trapped and restricted condition as a hunted man hiding in caves. He longs for freedom not only for personal relief but so that he can publicly praise God. David expects that God's deliverance will lead to worship and gratitude. He also anticipates being restored to the community of the righteous, who will gather around him when God deals bountifully with him. Overall, Psalm 142 portrays a journey from despair to trust. David begins by expressing deep distress and loneliness, feeling surrounded by enemies and abandoned by people. Yet through prayer he reaffirms that God knows his situation, provides refuge, and has the power to deliver him. The psalm teaches that in moments of overwhelming difficulty, a believer can bring every burden honestly before God and find hope in his faithful care.
Psalm 142, a contemplation of David, a prayer when he was in the cave. I cry out to the Lord with my voice. With my voice to the Lord I make my supplication. I pour out my complaint before him. I declare before him my trouble. When my spirit was overwhelmed within me, then you knew my path. In the way in which I walk, they have secretly set a snare for me. Look on my right hand and see, for there is no one who acknowledges me. Refuge has failed me. No one cares for my soul. I cried out to you, O Lord. I said, You are my refuge, my portion in the land of the living. Attend to my cry, for I am brought very low. Deliver me from my persecutors, for they are stronger than I. Bring my soul out of prison, that I may praise your name. The righteous shall surround me, for you shall deal bountifully with me.